I might be a little bit late to the game doing this now, but I'm about $1 billion late doing this now. Hey, what's up, you guys? It's me, Derek K, the review. Deadpool Wolverine's been out for a couple weeks now, and if you haven't seen it, damn, I'm sorry. But if you have, this is my Deadpool Wolverine spoiler discussion, and if you haven't seen this movie at this point, stick around because it's been out for a couple weeks now, and I gotta tell you a couple things I enjoyed, plus a couple minor nitpicks. I feel like, okay, I liked it, but then when I think about it overall, I'm like, but how does this fit in really? I'm not gonna go beat for beat for the movie. I'm just gonna talk about the certain things I liked and a couple things I'm like, feels like it needs a bit more improving later on in the future. So let's get to it. Like right as the movie begins, you hear the Marvel logo and you hear Deadpool singing in the background. It's like, oh hey guys, it's been a minute. And yeah, there's been a whole rights issue. Disney bought Fox, but they wanted me, someone who never had a franchise and the one who really thinks is deserving of a universe. It's like, okay, that's funny. I like the little commentary now that we're seeing Deadpool incorporated into the Marvel Universe, and we're going to see how is this going to factor, seeing as though, okay, Wolverine died at the end of Logan, and at the very beginning he's digging up his grave, and it's like, oh, so fuck that movie, I guess. It seemed a bit disrespectful, but I'm like, oh, we're really going there, and you see him talking to his dead skeleton, and it's like, yeah, you guys really pushed it a bit too far there, but in a Deadpool manner, it's funny. But if you're really taking these movies seriously, it's like, wow, they just... So everything in Logan didn't matter, huh? And it's not till the TVA shows up ready to arrest him and you see Wade dismantle Wolverine's skeleton, actually fight everybody to the beat of Bye Bye Bye. And to be honest, when that moment, like the first beat of that song came in, I was like, oh, we're really doing this, huh? Okay. And throughout this whole opening sequence, you see him doing the sequence and dancing in NSYNC. And it's like, wow, the tone of this intro is exactly how I feel like the movie is going to be. And to be honest, it's naturally funny. You don't even see some of the humor forced into it. You see everything progress. Same thing like with the opening intros of the previous Deadpool movies. Like the first one doing it in the car and the second one parodying James Bond. This one does it in its own way to say, yeah, I'm in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is all the money I got now, so let's in for a show. And it showed off a bit more of what happened at the very end of Deadpool 2, where you see him kill old Deadpool, save Vanessa, save Peter, fix a couple timelines, and you see him go into the MCU. And it's funny because I saw it said March 2018, and I was like, oh wait, that's when the deal finalized. And it's funny because around the time Infinity War was just about to release, and it's like, oh wait, so now that they got the rights back, so that means the X-Men and Fantastic Four, they would show up in Infinity War and Endgame, right? That's not how contracts work, but at the time, it's like, yeah, that hype and everything that was going on around this deal, I was ready. I wasn't expecting like a literal reference or Deadpool, let's say, go into the MCU. I thought it was going to merge together. But it's funny when you see him be interviewed by Happy, of all people, where it's like, okay, that's one of our major MCU characters. But I didn't get why he was like the only MCU character specifically that's like, okay, you have connections to the Avengers, and now he's the only one you're talking to about this whole ordeal with Deadpool. But then again, by the post-credit scene, you kind of get why. He gets rejected, and we move right into modern day, where you see Deadpool's hung up the mantle. He's not even doing any crime fighting anymore. He's out there selling cars with Peter. You see him go through a downward spiral where everybody hasn't talked to him in years. He's the only one really trying to keep things together when you realize, oh, so after Deadpool 2 and after he saved Vanessa, all that didn't even matter, and time travel rules as applied. It seems like, okay, Vanessa moved on, everybody else has moved on, he's not even gonna be part of the X-Men or anything like that anymore, so it's like, he's just a regular dude. Just like in the trailer, you see the TVA take him in, and also the fact that they actually need Deadpool for a higher purpose, and it's not only till they realize, okay, you're gonna be a part of the bigger cinematic universe, and you see him look at the scenes from Avengers, a couple moments from within the MCU itself, and the fact that you see little hints of the future, because you see Thor holding dying Deadpool, and it's like, why is Thor crying? And you see that throughout the movie as it progresses, where it's like, oh, Thor, God of Thunder. I found that funny until I realized, wait a minute, he can heal. I didn't talk about Paradox in my previous review because I feel like if I were to talk about his character specifically, I didn't want to spoil or at least acknowledge the fact that he's a secondary villain in this. And for what it looks like, it seems that at the end of Loki Season 2, after the whole TVA reset, it looks like there are still people out there that are within Loki's way, because it looks like he wants to kill off and prune timelines when it's like, okay, after everything that's happened and after the Time Ripper thing that happened in the previous season, you still have rogue agents around in the TVA, so I'm like, okay, that's something I hope gets explored. And that's where you see that Deadpool world is dying because it's lost its anchor being, that anchor being Wolverine, where if you realize this, Logan's death at the very end of Logan is the thing that ended a century, or should I say a decade of Fox X-Men movies. And it's funny that that acknowledgement is the reason why Deadpool's world is dying, because without Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, if you think about it realistically, after Logan, everybody died off the X-Men franchise. They didn't care about Dark Phoenix. They didn't care about whatever movies they were putting out right after that. And I feel like, okay, this is kind of meta, but then in a way it works because realistically, without that character, this world or this universe can't live on without him. Deadpool escapes and we get to a montage of different Wolverines meeting up, all played by Hugh Jackman specifically, where you see comic accurate Wolverine with his 5'3". And I found that funny because it's like, oh, you know what? I'm kind of 5 foot something, so that is kind of embarrassing. You see Age of Apocalypse Wolverine with the big hair and one arm. You see him on the cross, which is like, oh, that's End of Time Wolverine. He's trying to get mad and unlock his Berserker Rage. Comic accurate Old Man Logan. And you see Wolverine in the yellow and brown suit, which I'm like, okay, that's a nice suit. And then you realize, oh, wait a minute, hold up. He pulls out the claws and boom, the Hulk reflection on his side. And it's like, oh man, we get to see Wolverine fight the Hulk, and it was just a tiny little brief scene. But the biggest one out of all these was Henry Cavill as Wolverine. But to be honest, I know everybody wanted to see him as Wolverine, but looking at him in this, I'm like, shit, he was too big for this role. I'm like, I appreciate it, yeah, but he was too big and bulky for this. I'm like, damn, that tank top cannot get shorter. He punches Deadpool, and that's where we meet the Wolverine we're going to be following throughout the rest of the movie. And I gotta say, the way their banter goes along in this, it's like, okay, this current Wolverine, we've seen Hugh Jackman do all these years of Wolverine, and we're seeing, okay, this is going to be the same guy, but now he's going to be interacting within the world of Deadpool, and I feel like, okay, how is that going to work? Because realistically, you notice how within all the X-Men movies itself, and I kind of talked about it, that all those movies dealt with realism, seriousness, that everything wasn't even played for laughs. But then looking at the relationship between him being the straight man and Deadpool being the comedian he is, it's funny seeing as though he's taking it so seriously, and Deadpool's like, yeah, whiskey dick of the claws? Couldn't even get it up, and it's like, okay, I like it. It feels a bit weird at first, but as the movie goes on, you kind of acknowledge it. They get pruned into the void, and when we get to that whole 20th Century Fox fight, it's funny in the fact that, okay, we've seen Wolverine fight in the movies before, but now within the yellow suit, it's funny the fact that he's getting on all fours, he's doing the spin move, and it's like, oh, we're seeing him a bit more actually fighting like comic accurate Wolverine. You see him doing flips, you see him jumping around, and it's like, huh, this is what I want to see. And I like the little detail where it's like, he was trying to punch at Deadpool, he punches him, and right when he claws him, he's like, oh, and that little acknowledgement, he's like, finally, I got this motherfucker. And all that gets interrupted when you see a hooded figure, and it's funny because I'm like, I recognize the voice, the music changed, you see a red and white glove, and once he jumps down and he unlocks the hood, and it's like, oh, that's Chris Evans. My whole theater cheered. And it's funny because I'm like, that's a new one, and I didn't expect him to show up in this. And once they were playing the Captain America theme in the background, or the Avengers theme, I was like, oh no, that ain't him. And I was waiting for that little moment where it's like Deadpool sees that, okay, he's the guy. He's the one he's the guy I'm waiting for. He's gonna say it. Avengers, and he cuts him off and says, flame on, showing off Johnny Storm, and I'm like, yep. Man, I didn't expect him to be in this. And it's kind of funny in the fact that everybody was assuming cameos for the most part, but most of the cameos in this movie weren't just cameos. And just like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in Spider-Man No Way Home, they weren't just there to be, okay, I'm here for the big fight, I'm here for a little tiny sequence for the fans. They're actual characters within this movie that have a purpose. The three of them get taken to Cassandra Nova's Ant-Man base, and that's where you see a whole plethora of Marvel characters, like you see the Russian for the Punisher, you see a couple X-Men villains like Azazel, Juggernaut, even Psylocke, which I'm like, oh, they couldn't get Olivia Munn back for this? And that's where we meet Cassandra, which, to be honest, the first time I saw it, I'm like, okay, let's see how they explain this whole, how should I put this? When we meet Cassandra, you see that she doesn't even care about Deadpool and Wolverine at first, because she's only want to rule the Void, she only wants to play to herself, and seeing as though, okay, I've been born within the Void itself, and I've been taken here against my will, technically, since, if you remember her origin from the comics, she's basically the adopted sister of Charles Xavier, which she, it's funny, because the way they don't acknowledge exactly how it was in the movie, within the comics, but her origin is the fact that she was a second fetus within the womb when Charles Xavier was going to be born. He felt it, and he choked the shit out of her within utero, killed it, and then she transferred her consciousness and soul somewhere else. And it's like, okay, they don't acknowledge that, but at least they kept it a bit simplified for this. And she killed off Johnny since Deadpool was like, you know what? Johnny was talking a bunch of shit about you. And at first I'm like, okay, that's a choice. But then when I think about Johnny's character, I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't put him aside that he did say all that stuff. And she just pulls his skin off, and I'm like, oh, damn, that sucks. And the way she would read minds, because instead of Charles Xavier doing this thing where he could just read your mind using his telepathy and all that, she would actually stick her fingers inside of somebody, and you see her fingers rolling around inside your brain, inside the face, going in and out, and it's like, damn, that's kind of weird. All of this ends when you see Elias show up ready to eat them, and you see the duo actually fly off on a sentinel leg, and right at that point, that's where we meet Dogpool and one of our new Deadpool variants, Nicepool. I remember seeing the set photos a while ago where you see this whole Deadpool in some modernized looking MCU style suit where you see, okay, he has all this body armor and lines and everything on the suit. I'm like, what is this all about? And you see him with a whole ponytail and everything. I'm like, okay, I don't know what this is, but in context with the movie, hopefully they explained it. And they kind of did, because you see that he's basically the nicest, or should I say he's basically Canadian Deadpool. And I like the little running joke where you see Deadpool trying to take Dogpool from him. He's like, you gotta give me my dog back. And Deadpool is like, if anything were to happen to you, I would like to take ownership of being her papa. And he's like, what would ever happen to me? Lots of things. All of that leads into what I believe is the best scene of this whole movie, where you see Deadpool and Wolverine in the car. They're driving around the void, at least trying to say, you know what? When you get back to the universe, what are you going to do once you get back? And that's when Wolverine is like, what do you mean, if? And this scene where Wolverine grills Deadpool over, you know what? No wonder the Avengers didn't want you, or the X-Men, and they for sure get anybody to join their team. He talked about how much of a loser Deadpool was, that he couldn't even save a relationship with a goddamn stripper. And once he said that, you know that meme where it's like, okay, you know you're in trouble when you see Spider-Man stop telling jokes, or the moment you see Batman smile? This is what I saw when you see Deadpool actually shut up and not tell jokes, and he looks at Wolverine and is like, I'm gonna fight you now. And they fight all over that Honda Odyssey to the tune of Grease's You're the One That I Want. Ooh, ooh. Here's where we get the whole supporting character cameo moment, which, I'm gonna be honest, I felt like I knew a couple of them going into this, because I'm like, okay, I remember the casting announcements, and also looking within the Instagram posts and YouTube comments itself. First one being Elektra, which I already knew Jennifer Garner was going to be in this since after Adam Project. She kind of did announce she was going to come back as Elektra early in the process of making this. But the second one that came out, I was like, oh, shit. And it was Wesley Snipes' Blade, which I'm like, oh, huh? That's, what? Huh? Yeah, my audience didn't even expect it. They just looked at him like, oh. Like, it wasn't even like a cheer-worthy moment. When they saw Elektra, it was like, okay, that's cool. When they saw Blade come in, it was like, damn, they got him. That's crazy. But the best one of them all was actually Channing Tatum's Gambit, where you just see the playing card go off, he catches it, and you see him in the suit, and it's like, oh, huh, this is a couple years in the making for him. For those of you who don't know, about 9 years ago, during San Diego Comic-Con, it was announced that Channing Tatum was going to play Gambit in a solo Gambit movie. But as soon as that time when Fox was trying to reschedule their X-Men movies, we didn't get that. And once the Disney deal finalized everything, it was like, okay, so that movie's dead in the water. But at least it's kind of cool that they got him for this movie, and for the fact that nobody has any attachment to this character. And if we're being honest with you, this was a year of Gambit. We had X-Men 97, and clearly enough, they killed them off halfway through within the show itself. But, you know, characters never die in comics. And his suit was a bit more clunky. It's comic accurate, but it looks a bit like cosplay, where it's like, okay, you see the jacket, the overcoat, the purple within itself. Even the fact that the whole helmet where you see it's like, okay, covering half his face, but it's a bit more tighter than I thought. And finally, X-23 Laura, which they shouldn't have released that final trailer, because that moment watching the movie within itself is like, okay, I expected all of them, but let's end this off with a piece of resistance actually showing off Laura. And I feel like if they didn't show that in the final trailer, that would have been a bit better and a bit more, you know, finally, we're getting all this come together. We're seeing this whole plethora of Marvel characters come together. And I feel like this moment is the fact that, okay, this is where we actually get the acknowledgement of how the world forgot about some of these characters. I mean, to us, as fans, we never forget. We know they exist. But casual viewers who haven't seen these movies all like that, they're like, oh, I know Blade, I know that, but there's like, yeah, we have to lead a legacy. Everybody forgot about us, and we just been discarded here against our will. And it's like, that's how you treat respectable characters, DC. They make a plan to stop Cassandra, and to do that, they need Juggernaut's helmet, which, in comic accurate lore, and they kind of did show it off within the movies itself, his helmet can keep anybody from getting into his head, and once they put that on Cassandra, that's going to weaken her powers, and hopefully they can at least trap her to at least get them out of the void. We see them pull up to the base, and everybody, all these characters get a moment to shine. We see Electric killing guys. We see Blade, for the most part, use his little knife, and I feel like, yeah, you could have had a sword at this point, because we know that we haven't seen modern day Blade, and they kind of do make a reference to it too, where it's like, how many Punishers have there been so far? You see him go, there's only ever been one Blade, and there's only ever gonna be one Blade. And Deadpool looks in the camera like, yeah, Marvel. We can't even get the new Blade, but we got old Blade back. Gambit shooting up his flaming cars, and X-23 actually getting to the fight. But the biggest thing was seeing Logan acknowledge the fact that he failed his X-Men. He's the reason why they died, specifically because there is a comic story that is describing the story they're telling in here, where he was away from the mansion, and once the humans came in, they killed everybody. It doesn't explain how, or if it's in a way where it was Sentinels, the FOH, from the actual comic lore, but it doesn't explain it at this point. We're getting hints of it, but I feel like it doesn't even need an explanation, since we know this was the struggle he had since he was a loner. He didn't wear the comic accurate suit, the yellow suit specifically, as like a way of saying, you know what, I'll just wear it because it's a part of a team. He wears it in memory of the X-Men, so it's like, oh, so this suit isn't just for us, it's for him to realize, oh yeah, this was my connection towards my team, and this is the only way I can actually live their memory on being one of the X-Men. They get the helmet on Cassandra, and they at least try to reason with her for the most part to at least let them go, and that's when Pyro shoots her, and it's like, okay, so she's dying. And once they get that helmet off, hopefully they can try to at least get her to help them. And it's kind of funny within those little moments itself where it's like, okay, if I take this helmet off you, will you let us go? Once you get this helmet off, I'm gonna kill you. And he's like, why are you like this? I don't even know myself. It was just random, but I kind of like that. Just villains being villains just because. She pops open a sling ring and opens a little portal for them to escape to Deadpool's world. And Alioth is on the way to the base, ready to get them. So it's like, once they jump through that portal, does that mean that Elektra, Blade, Punish... Does that mean that Elektra, Blade, Gambit, and X-23 just ate shit and died? Oh. I don't know. That little thing just bothered me. They get back to their world and you see them try to get to the TVA outpost back in the subway. But I feel like, okay, the whole thing with the TVA, it was a bit confusing to the fact that everything they had was within the subway system at that point, because I'm like, okay, the TVA, as I remembered in the Loki series, they're within outside the universe itself, and them being within the Fox universe is kind of convenient since that's the world they're eliminating anyway. But I feel like, yeah, if they're going to destroy everything within that universe, why aren't they back within the TVA itself where they can get them? But, plot-wise. We see Dogpool jump through the portal, and you see Nicepool come out too. And here's where we get the Deadpool core coming in, when you see Lady Deadpool, Cowboy Deadpool, Kid Pool, Baby Pool. You see 2099, you see a Deadpool with a Wrexham outfit. You see one in like a Greatest Showman-like style. You see him with a top hat, and you see him with a cane. I'm like, okay, that's got to be a little Hugh Jackman reference. You see Samurai Deadpool, the Fool. And weirdly enough, throughout all of this, I'm like, you could have put Nolan North in this. Or at least an animated Deadpool with his voice. It's like, he was the first voice I wouldn't say that I recognized as Deadpool back in the day with the whole Versus animation, and within the video games and some of the cartoons itself. But I'm like, okay, you could have at least put him in there. The Deadpool core shoots at them, and Deadpool uses Nicepool as a shield, whereas like Wolverine looks at him like, you did that on purpose. I did no such thing. And surely enough, it was like, okay, how long is it going to take you for the heal? And Nicepool is like, regenerate? What do you mean regenerate? And he was like, damn, that sucks. Deadpool uses him as a human shield to get to the other side. And this is where we actually get the moment. The moment most of us has been looking forward to since the trailers. Where you see Deadpool and Wolverine walk out in that little sequence with like a prayer breaking in the background. And you see them side by side, and you see Wolverine pull out his hood. And there it is, the mask. And once I saw the mask, I was like, nice. Because we've seen it in the toys, but now seeing it in live action. And that it also has like the little Deadpool feature where it's like, it has the white eyes. But you don't see the white eyes like be expressive and move. You're seeing everything from the eyebrows and the cowl move, which is like, okay, that's different. And that tells me, you know what? White eyes can work within a suit. So it looks like DC is going to be on the phone about this. It's like, you know what? White eyes work. Green Lantern, Batman, anybody we can use, we can do that now, and it's fine. And that little scrolling sequence where you see them both fight side by side, where it's like, we've been waiting for this for years. It's funny. And you see, it's cool. You see Deadpool shooting at little Deadpools itself. You see Wolverine clawing them up, cutting their legs, cutting their arms off. And it all ends with that comic accurate pose where you see Wolverine jumping out with his claws out and you see his mouth open. And it's funny the fact that the fight just ends. And then you see that all the other Deadpools heal. And you see Peter come down there and it's like, oh, Peter. And they all stop and acknowledge him. And it's funny because you see everybody just like, oh, you know Peter? Shoot. Peter's a legend in every goddamn Deadpool world. So it's like, oh. it just felt random, but I find it funny. To stop Cassandra, Paradox tells them that you actually have to connect two different sides of the Time Ripper. So like that, you can actually dismantle the machine. But in doing that, it kills off one of them. So it's like, okay, tension, stakes. And you see Deadpool at least say, you know what? Wolverine, you should have this. You lost, I wanted to have this team up for a while. And you see Logan's like, you have family here. I got nothing left. And once Logan is ready to go inside, Deadpool knocks him out and is like, you know what? I'm Marvel Jesus. I gotta do this. Deadpool's trying to connect both sides of the machine together. He can't reach it until you see Wolverine grab his arm and actually claws into the machine. And this moment was kind of funny. And the fact that it's like, damn, Jim on Monday. You see Logan's shirt rip off, showing off his abs, which I'm like, huh. Damn, at 50-something, Hugh Jackman still got it like that. That's crazy to me. And it's kind of funny because you see Deadpool look at his little chest hairs and it's like, they stopped Cassandra and his world is actually back to normal. His world is actually regenerating again. Logan replaces the anchor being Wolverine, which, if you think about it, it doesn't make sense because you realize that's the Fox universe. And since this movie is canonically taking place in 2024 and Logan takes place in 2029, does that mean timeline-wise there's still two Wolverines out there? Like in Deadpool 2, you did see the X-Men in the mansion and you still have Colossus there where it's like, okay, so this whole thing doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it's a bit confusing, but I don't know. Fox has a thing with messed up timelines, so it just doesn't matter. And that's it. The movie ends with everybody reconnecting with each other. Deadpool's starting to get back with Vanessa. You see Logan there and X-23 side by side where it's like, oh, so this is where it ends. And I like the little final shot where it shows both of their helmets side by side where it's like, yeah, this is the thing. This is what I've wanted to see. If we actually got it after many, many years of X-Men movies, we finally got to see Deadpool and Wolverine fight together, go through an adventure, and we actually see them go through a good movie together. All that doesn't end there because you see a little, I wouldn't say clip show, but it's more like a tribute where you hear the beginning of Good Riddance, Time of Your Life, and then you see clips throughout all the X-Men movies and all the Fantastic Four, Elektra, Fox movies where I'm like, oh, so they're really doing this. Showing off the beginning of those movies. You see little interviews with Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds as their characters, and you're like, wow, all this is just done now. They weren't even given a chance to actually be part of the cinematic universe till now because at the time watching these, you gotta remember, I was a kid and looking at all these characters, I'm like, oh, it's Marvel. We all know they're Marvel. And at some point, they're gonna be together because we've seen it in the comics, we've seen it in the animations. I even had that whole blanket that showed off the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, the Avengers all side by side. And I'm like, we never got that because rights issues, they were all in separate studios. And it's like, damn, memory lane. They should acknowledge the past more often and say, you know what, we know what we did, we know our mistakes, this is our legacy, this is what we have, and all the best parts are still there. So just because some people didn't like these movies back in the day and some people say, oh, these movies are shit now, you gotta remember, they're still part of the legacy. They aren't as good as people think they are compared to the movies that we get today, but at least they're there to make a name for themselves, and they were the first time some of these people actually experienced these characters, so it's like, yeah, this was a touching tribute. And the post-credit scene ends with Deadpool showing off a bit of real footage, showing off how Johnny was actually talking shit about Cassandra, and it's like, you can quote me, K. And yeah, that's Deadpool and Wolverine for you. I didn't talk about everything specifically, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going to talk about some of my best moments, some of the things I liked in this. And if I'm being honest with you, this movie has no impact on the MCU whatsoever. I know it's within the Marvel Studios banter itself. I know there's the TVA. But if you think about it, really, nothing in this movie affects anything going on moving forward, because this doesn't have any lead up to Secret Wars. This doesn't have any lead up to Doomsday or any other upcoming projects. And I like that, because movies like this within the MCU should stay isolated within itself, at least deal with their problems and some of the things I feel like have been struggling with Marvel, because I feel like, okay, we're introducing all these characters, but everything's got to connect to this. Everything's going to connect to the Disney Plus series. Everything's going to connect to the movies. And then we got to at least acknowledge it. So like that, when we see the new one, everybody has to watch all these different types of things. So like that, they can acknowledge the fact why Robert Downey Jr. is Dr. Doom. And that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Yeah, that's how nerds talk about when they say you got to watch every little thing specifically leading up to a new movie. And if I'm being honest, hopefully they learn from this. I know it hit 1 billion right now, and I'm going to watch it at least one more time before it ends too. Go check it out. See it again. It's better the second time. And it's better the third time. I might catch it a fourth time, but if I'm being honest, this is the one movie I feel like, is this going to be my record for the most amount I've seen? Because so far it's Spider-Man No Way Home, and I don't even know if I might get a chance. It might tie up, but I feel like, yeah, this has a lot of rewatchability. And so far, if I'm being honest with you, and it is kind of cheating, I feel like this is my favorite movie of this year so far. Alright guys, thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already. All my social media is down in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.